You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, turnovers were just too much for Kansas State to overcome as they fall in the Sweet 16 to USC. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Kansas State. I'm your host, Christian Rauh, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Welcome into this special live post-game of Kansas State falling to the USC Trojans 67-61. It was a great game throughout. And it was a really good game up until the very end. I mean, we had to worry about the referees making some right calls. We had to make sure we went to the video replay. But at the end of the day, some of the shots didn't fall. The turnovers were too much. And Kansas State season has came to an end. We're going to talk about it in full here on this episode. We're going to dig into everything and just talk about how great of a season this was as we wrap up the Kansas State women's basketball season. Before we do that, though, this episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. I don't know if you need those right now after the couple games that Kansas State women's have had lately, but head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from. If you need one now, grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. Stock up today and stay energized. Kansas State falling 67-61. Again, I had hope. I thought that there was a really good feeling in this one, even though that shots weren't falling from some of the players that really needed to step up in this one. And, you know, of course, Serena Sundell was just absolutely amazing. Ayoka Lee was great. She found a way to finish off her Kansas State career with a double-double. Nothing better than that. But overall, it was just a tough one. You know, even with Juju Watkins being out, as I mentioned when we were previewing this one, USC is a great basketball team. And even the player that I expected to step up for Kansas State, for USC, it wasn't the case. That team found a way to step up. Overall, it was really Kennedy Smith that was a big asset to the team. Howell was really good as well. Overall, USC, at the end of the day, just proved why they were a 1 seed in this one, even without Juju Watkins. And I'm sure they're going to have a really tough matchup in the Elite Eight against UConn. That's going to be a tough matchup. And I wish it was Kansas State that was playing that game. But overall, I think USC was the better team after this one. I don't know if Kansas State has played a better defense all season long than USC did in this game. It certainly felt that way. It certainly felt that Kansas State hasn't seen any type of defense like this. I mean, they were sticky. USC was playing some really tough defense the entire time. And of course, the turnovers were a big asset to that. 16 turnovers to only 9 of USC. And they had 10 steals in this one. Starting to see comments coming in. Thank you for that. Bring in your questions, your comments. We'll answer them during this live post game. For sure on this one. There's just a lot to get to in this, and we're definitely going to get to it, but I feel like the turnovers were the main thing from the get-go in this one. There was some interesting rotation calls by Jeff Mittie. I really was confused why we saw more of Sanchez and Lester when we didn't see them in the last game against Kentucky. And Sanchez had a really tough time with turnovers in that second quarter, if you will. Just the final few minutes of that second quarter, I believe, final 3 minutes, all 4 of her turnovers occurred. And that was a big different feeling heading into halftime. They wound up only being up 2 at half, and they couldn't hold it off because USC wound up winning this one by 6. Now, the 2-point lead in halftime was great. Went into a 12-0 run in the third quarter for USC. I think there was probably 1 or 2 more plays that probably shouldn't have happened before Jeff Mittie should have called a timeout. I mean, this is the point where we start nitpicking these conversations, right? Because the game didn't go in Kansas State's favor. But at the end of the day, Kansas State found a way to come back from that 12-0 run and take the lead in the fourth quarter. If they would have found a way to make those adjustments a little sooner, there were multiple times that Kansas State could have won this game and move forward, but those turnovers are just too much. And overall, it was just something that just couldn't overcome a tough USC team. Again, this is a team that won the Big Ten outright. Now, again, with Juju Watkins, this is the first full game of the season that USC has had to deal without Juju Watkins, and they found out winning a win in this one. The couple of biggest things that I brought up heading into this one is what Kansas State needed to do to win this basketball game. I said they needed to out-rebound USC. They technically did that, 39-37, and they needed to find a way to stop USC in transition. I don't think they did that. I think there was a lot of issues with the transition, the way USC played. They definitely slowed them down, especially in the first half. Kansas State definitely used their pace, but overall, I think USC did a good job in transition. Of course, those turnovers don't make it easier to set your defense. When you're setting up turnovers, especially when you're getting those steals from, either it was from those illegal screens that the referees kept calling, or just trying to continue to push bounce passes to Sundell from the sticky defense you were getting from Howell, or you were getting from Heckle. There were so many. Even Smith had a lot of really good steals. Like 10 steals from USC in this one, and it was just a really tough time. But again, Serena Sundell, 22 points, 6 assists, 6 rebounds. She was outstanding. And she only had, according to the stat sheet, actually, she didn't have a single turnover. That's something that we have mentioned probably for the last month or so since Ayoka Lee's been out, heading into the Big 12 tournament. One of the things we needed to focus on was Serena Sundell worrying about her turnovers. According to the box score, although there were 16 of them in this game, not a single one came from Sundell. That might have been the case because Jeff Mittie, they had a different kind of coaching structure in this one. Sundell didn't bring the ball down as much as she usually does. And I'm hesitant to point fingers here, but that, to me, it was a head scratcher. The rotation here was definitely a head scratcher. The offense was a little bit of head scratching as well. I just didn't really understand why we were holding the ball at the perimeter and waiting for someone to run and grab it. It wasn't working. And they kept going back to the well, and unfortunately ended in a loss here. See some comments coming in. We'll go answer some of those before we head to a break. JJH, the women had a solid season. Nothing to hang their head about. Too many lackadaisical passes, shots cost the game. I'm with you. There were some multiple shots, especially at the end. They were doing a really good job trying to get into Ayoka Lee and get her to push. Ayoka Lee didn't have the best numbers in this one. 12 points, 10 rebounds. I mean, double-double is great. Don't get me wrong. But I think it could have been a lot better. She wound up going 6 for 13 from the field. She could have had a lot better of a game if there was just a couple more shots that she would have been able to strength through. Overall, I think she played immaculate defense. Even though when the shots weren't falling for her early in this one and towards the end as well, I think she played fantastic defense. She winds up with 4 fouls in this one. I would say really only 3, because that one at the free throw line was just absolutely dreadful. But I'm with you. I think that this was an absolutely great season from the women's team, and there's a lot to look forward to. Even though there's a lot of turnover that's about to happen with Kansas State, there's still a lot to look forward to, and we're going to talk about that here in just a second. See some from Robbie saying we couldn't touch them, but they could club us all game. Well, I mean, that was something, I think that has something to do. One, you can definitely say the referees were playing it a little different, and I wouldn't disagree with you at all. I'm always hesitant to blame the refs because at the end of the day, you got to still win the game, no matter if you're playing one team or two, right? So it's hard for me to point the fingers, especially since they're not Big 12 refs right now that we've noticed on the men's side, which have been really bad. But there was, I think, a little bit of calls that definitely should have been called, and they weren't. But I will say this, USC's defense is really good. They are really aggressive. They've been aggressive all season long, but I don't know if we've seen that much aggression on the defensive side. They were super sticky, and I think you probably could have called a lot more fouls on that. That did not happen. So I'll agree with you there, Robbie, for sure. Got a little one coming here, said, late listen here, but why did Sanchez play? She really didn't play in the other 2 games, attorney. So I'm with you. I'm with you on this one. I'm surprised that Sanchez and Lester got some playing time, especially after seeing how well in the Kentucky game Ayoka Lee was playing. And then when they needed Ayoka Lee to sit down, Kennedy Taylor stepped in and did a fantastic job. Now, maybe it was the fact that Taylor's shots weren't going through. She was 1 for 6 from the field. She had 2 turnovers. Maybe there was something the coaching staff didn't see. I'm sure that's going to be a question at the post game. We'll have to definitely check that out when that post game is published. But I will say I am shocked as well, especially after looking at in hindsight, especially in that second quarter when she had 4 turnovers heading into halftime. I would have loved to see more Kennedy Taylor when Ayoka Lee had to sit. And to be honest, I would have been more than okay with just seeing another 7-person rotation like we did with Kentucky, only seeing Taylor and Sides come off the bench. I think that would have been great. And for the record, Sides had a tough game once again as well. That's 2 games in a row that she was scoreless. There's a couple times she looked a little lost out there. Defensively, I think she did good, but I'm still optimistic for her future. Her and Walker, I think, are going to be some great guards heading into the future for this team as well. Let's dig more into this. We got plenty more to talk about. We got more comments coming in as well. Plenty more things to talk about here on Locked On Kansas State, this live postgame show as the Wildcats fall to USC. Well, we're all about the stats, and numbers don't lie. And because the numbers don't lie, when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level with the ability to tow up to 800 and 500 pounds, 8,500 pounds. I'm glad that I can do numbers right today, right? It can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room up to 8 people, the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. So whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. So take adventures to new heights with the all-new Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. This show today, this live postgame, is also sponsored by FanDuel. March Madness is here. And with FanDuel, it's giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. New customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. $200, folks, to use on everything. Buzzer beaters, Cinderella stories, although there's really no Cinderella stories left now that Kansas State, the 5 seed. It's all chalk on both the women's and the men's side. So with the tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. So visit FanDuel.com to get started and get in on the college hoop action all tournament long. Let's get back to more talking about this Kansas State loss against USC. It was really a tough one. I mean, I had hopes. I had hopes at the end there with the whole replay with Serena Sundell doing some wild, aggressive things. I mean, I'm not surprised that final pass and play where the defense was playing tough and Sundell found a way to turn it over to make it just slide off the fingers of the USC Trojans to give us one more shot to get in the game. I'm not surprised that Sundell found a way to get the ball back for her team. She's an absolute dog. She really is. Is there a better word for it? I mean, what a leader Serena Sundell has been for this program all of these years. It's been really exciting. The unfortunate part about this, though, is that they were down by 4 heading into that play, if you will. And although they didn't need a 3, I don't know if they were going to look for it because the 3-pointers weren't great. And I kind of had this weird feeling after the whole conversation all week long about Poindexter starting 0 for 5 and then hitting her next 8 for 10 or whatever the case was. And she had 8 3-pointers in the game against Kentucky, that we were going to find a way, or there was going to be some sort of struggle for Kansas State behind the 3-point line. 5 for 16 from threes in this one, 31%. And that's a tough thing to go. Now, on the flip side, USC wasn't very good either, 6 for 18 from the 3-point land. But that's an identity that Kansas State really holds up in this one with their 3 points. And especially we saw in the Kentucky game. If you take those 3 points away, we're not even in the Sweet 16. Kentucky beats us outright. And I had a little bit of worries that we were going to fall into that. Poindexter winds up going 2 for 8 from the 3-point line. She only finishes with 6 points. I felt like she was on the bench a lot more than I wanted her to be. I don't have the official minutes right now, but it felt like that. It felt like we were seeing her on the bench way more than I wanted her to be. And she didn't take enough shots. And when she I don't know if it was a confidence issue or whatever the case may be. I know when she was down 0 for 5 in the Kentucky game, she said that she was not feeling confident. Her teammates lifted her up. If some of her other teammates aren't shooting great, that might be a very tough task to do. So not trying to assume things here, but when you have a good 3-point shooting game and then have an off 3-point shooting game. Of course it happens, but it's something that you need when you are trying to beat a team like USC. You need everything to work, everything to fire on all cylinders. And unfortunately in this game, it just didn't happen. The 12-0 run, I think I already mentioned this, but let's talk about it one more time. In the third quarter here, USC got up to a 12-0 run before Jeff Mittie called a timeout. I think it was at least one play too late. I think you could probably make the argument that it was 2 plays too late before that timeout hit. Thankfully, Kansas State found a way to come back in the fourth quarter. I know this game is all about runs, and we talk about it all the time, how this game is an up and down race and who can just wind up being the victor at the end, who can wind up handling the runs, the peaks and the valleys, whatever words or phrases you want to use here. But if you could find a way to get that 12-0 run, maybe turn into an 8-0 run, we're talking about a potential 1-point deficit when Sundell has that amazing turnover at the end. Or you don't even have to take that final timeout with a minute and some change left to go. You have a different scenario. So those small moments that even happen in the first, second, in this case, the third quarter, they have underlying effects heading into the end of the game. I don't think I have to tell you that, but if you would have found a way, and if Jeff Mittie could have found a way to call that timeout and realize, okay, I need to just cool this run. 2 plays before, only an 8-0 run. It could have been a completely different ball game when we were heading into those final minutes of this game. I know I'm nitpicking here, but am I wrong? Let me know what you think. Do you think of that 12-0 run? Do you think Mittie called the timeout too late? That's exactly what I was thinking when I was watching it on TV. Like, why aren't we calling a timeout? They were up on a 10-0 run, then there was another steal, and then he finally called a timeout. I think we needed that one probably 2 possessions beforehand. Probably the case in there. So let me know. But overall, it was a good job not letting them run away in that third quarter after that 12-0 run. They picked it up at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Ayoka Lee had an amazing shot to begin the game, begin the final quarter. And they found a way to actually take the lead back in the final frame. For the longest time, these two teams, there was no larger lead. The broadcast crew kept saying it. In the fourth quarter, there was no larger lead than 4 points until that final USC lead with the fouls at the end of the game. I mean, this team, they were trying to get to their first Elite Eight for the first time since 1982, only the second time in program history. They fall short, but they fall short against one of the best teams in the country. And they bring one of the best teams in the country, no matter if you have Juju Watkins or not, to the final minute of their game. There's a lot to be proud of with this program. And recruits are watching this. Prospective players are watching this. There's a lot of things to be excited about. Jeff Mittie's not going anywhere. He's not heading to Mizzou like people thought he might. One of the best recruiting classes Kansas State has ever seen is about to hit campus. There's a lot of things to be excited about on this. We mentioned Poindexter. We mentioned defense. I want to get into a little bit more of, although we talked about how sticky USC's defense was, Kansas State's defense needs some more credit as well. And Zyanna Walker, how much of a dog is she? Let's dig into that to finish up here. And if you have more comments or questions, I'm going to answer them as we finish up this live postgame show of Locked On Kansas State. Well, daylight savings has snuck up on us again, and if you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5-Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun, but sometimes you need a little boost to power through. Whether you're staying up late watching these NCAA tournaments or squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day, 5-Hour Energy gives you a quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. Speaking of golf, how nice has this weather has been lately? I mean, come on now. Extra daylight savings times means extra activities with longer days. I love getting outside for a hike or a run. I got this perfect trail just outside my house. I love going out there with my daughter. It's one of my favorite things. And getting, to me, the Peach Mango 5-Hour Energy is my go-to for a quick boost. So head to 5hourenergy.com, find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, and my personal favorite, peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack delivered right to your door. If you need one now, well, every grocery store or convenience store has them everywhere. So stock up today and stay energized. That's 5-Hour Energy. Welcome back to Locked On Kansas State. Hey, if you're listening right now and you're not subscribed, do me a favor, click that subscribe. We're almost to 800 subscribers. We're growing right now. And if you can hit that like button as well, it helps out a lot. And I'm going to do a little secret right here. Locked On Jayhawks has more subscribers than us. We got to beat that. We got to change that here. I know we're a new channel, but we can cook them. We can do it real fast. Just hit that subscribe and join the journey here. We're talking more Kansas State falling to USC 67-61 in this one. And again, it's one of these games where you're the underdog. I mean, you're a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. Feels like you should be, to me, it was a 5 seed was disrespected because I felt like we were disrespected because of the Ayoka Lee injury, because of how we performed in the Big 12 tournament. I understand why they seeded us there, but I knew we were going to find a way to cook up some upsets, if you will. We were getting out of Lexington. I felt very good about that. And if you look at how the men's tournament has turned out, if you look at how the women's tournament is now finishing off, Kansas State heading into the game was the only 5 seed left. I think there was no even 3 or 4 seeds in the entire tournament once they entered play. It's all been chalk whatsoever. It's been a very top-heavy season for both the men's and the women's side. Overall, Kansas State had a chance to get to that Elite 8, misses it just slightly. But other than the turnovers, I feel like they played a really good game. And I think there's a lot to be proud of. And I'm sure you're going to hear that in the press conference from Jeff Mittie and from whatever players step up there. I hope we get some words from Ayoka Lee and Serena Sundell, since it will be their final game in a Kansas State Wildcats uniform. I can't wait to see both those jerseys, by the way, hanging in the rafters. I hope that both that happens on the same day, by the way. Maybe the first home game of next season. It needs to happen that quick. Ayoka Lee's jersey and Serena Sundell. Let's do it on the same day. I think it's warranted. I think it absolutely is warranted. Kansas State found a way to stop Irrfan from playing her game. She had over 30 points in the last game against Mississippi State. When Juju Watkins went down, I thought the offense was going to run through her. It was a guessing game, because it was the only time that Juju Watkins was not on the court for meaningful minutes all season long. And Irrfan stepped up, and they kept talking how great she's going to be, and she is. In the WNBA draft, she's predicted to go 3rd overall. She goes to single digits in this one. Kansas State stops her for single digits. I think she finishes with 7, I believe it was. Yeah, 7 points. She's 3 for 13 from the field. Had 8 rebounds. But she was 1 for 4 from the charity strike. She couldn't hit a shot from the 3-point, and she only had 1 3-point shot, but she only finishes with 7 points. That was only the second time all year that Irrfan was stuck with single digits. It happened one time in the regular season. Kansas State also finds a way to do it in this one. Kennedy Smith, on the other hand, she stepped up for USC. She was probably the main player. If you're going to give an MVP player away, if you had to hand it to the winner, I'd hand it to Kennedy Smith. She played great defense, that sticky defense, whether you want to say the refs gave her some leeway or not. I'll let you be the judge of that one. But she played really good overall defense and offense, and she was probably the reason why USC is heading to take on UConn on Monday night. But on the flip side, Kansas State's defense was just as good. And it points at a player that we are going to have back next season, and hopefully for another season after that. Zyanna Walker was absolutely amazing. I mean, dog mentality is exactly what you think of when you think of her. I don't think there's a better defender in at least the entire Big 12. She made the all-defensive team for a reason, and she's just fantastic. What she's done with defenders over the years, and she's really solidified her craft, and I'm excited to see what that means moving forward, because it's going to get better, and I don't even know how you can make it better. Her defense is so good, and her shooting is getting a lot better either. With 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter or so, if you take me back to this scenario here, if you can remember, the shot clock was expiring, and Walker got the ball. She made a brilliant shot. I mean, with the shot expiring, with the shot clock expiring, it was a brilliant shot. That type of clutch performance is what we're going to need, what we're going to look for this offseason, heading into next year, when you're saying goodbye to Ayoka Lee, saying goodbye to Serena Sundell. You need someone to step up. And that's going to be my prediction, my initial prediction for who will next season. the great defender, and in this case, turning into a very good shooter in Z Walker. Got some more comments coming in. Al, hi, I'm glad you covered the women's game as well. We do. Yeah, we cover basketball, football. I want to get into baseball soon. They're doing great. Don't get me wrong. Baseball's doing great. But just the way every other news has been coming up with the football, the spring trainings, or it's not spring training, with the spring practices coming up and the transfer portal, I want to make sure you guys are covered with that. So absolutely. And I will continue to cover the women's game every single year. We'll talk transfer portal so much more because they deserve it. They're such a good program. Mopping over Sanchez any day. We didn't see Moppin, right? We saw Lester and we saw Sanchez in this one. So I'm wondering, to me, I can't wait to see what the press conference says over that. That's probably the biggest question that I want Mittie to answer. There's two questions I want Jeff Mittie to answer in this one. I wanted him to understand and talk about the center rotation, because last week when they asked him this question, he said he felt comfortable with how great Kennedy Taylor played when Ayoka Lee was out. Did he not feel good about Kennedy Taylor today? Was it because she went 1 for 6 from the field? Like, what was it that made them also decide to go with Lester and Sanchez in this case? And then I want to know what he was thinking during that 12-0 run. I want to hear that as well. And I think we're going to get both answers, because I feel like I'm not the only one that feels that as well. I'm really happy with this team. I can't say that enough. I'm not happy that we're going home, but overall, very happy that they've made the first Sweet 16 appearance since 2002, the third in program history. Would have been nice to check the box from 1982, but this team was great. Historic season for Kansas State. There's no doubt about that. And I don't think it regresses from here, folks. As I mentioned, there's a great core of players on this team. As long as they stick around, the transfer portal's open now, so you got to think that. But I think I'm in good spirits about that feeling. After you go to the Sweet 16, why would you want to leave? So I feel good about that, and you're bringing in a fantastic recruiting class. So I think the momentum and the hype for this team is only going to continue. And Sweet 16, that's the first time Jeff Mittie made it since he's been the coach at Kansas State. That means that goal is now knocked off. Now there's another milestone, if you will, another pillar to check from. And that's where you got to go next season. The Elite Eight is the goal next year. Of course, Natty is always the goal, but one more step. Each and every season, let's let that happen. Thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. I loved it. If you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button. We are bringing you content every single day now. There'll be an episode out tomorrow. We're bringing episodes out Monday. Hey, maybe even multiple episodes out during the week. April's going to be huge. We got spring practice coming. Transfer portal's wide open. If you've seen with the men's side, there's already a lot of chatter we haven't covered yet on this show. And we got to talk Big 12. We got to talk NCAA wide stuff, revenue sharing, you name it. We're all going to talk about it on this channel. So plenty of stuff coming out for you on Locked On Kansas State. Make sure you're subscribed. And if you are subscribed, stay subscribed, because we are going to bring it to you every single day of the week. And again, sometimes even more than once. Thank you so much for listening. This has been Locked On Kansas State.